January 9th, 2026, Buddha Dhamma, Chapter 11.9, Happiness and Ethics, Sukha and Sila, page 1154. Very often when people talk about religions or religious practice, they use the expression religion and ethics. The development of happiness is inextricably linked to improving one's life, to improve society, and to developing other aspects of spiritual practice. In this context, it is necessary to state that the development of happiness is equivalent to the development of ethics. And conversely, ethical development is equivalent to the cultivation of happiness. If one can understand this connection, then one will understand the true meaning both of ethics and happiness. When people hear the word ethics or morality, they often get the sense of acting against one's will. Take the example. When speaking about ethics, people often think about needing to refrain from certain harmful or evil behavior, which give the sense of force or constraint. In reality, ethical development is one aspect of developing happiness. True ethics belongs to ethics of happiness. If ethics is merely a system of going against one's will or is tied up with suffering, then it is not true ethics. It will not lead to true success. This is not to say that ethics does not involve some form of constraint and self-control. It does involve constraint, of which there are two kinds. First, early stages of practice may involve some constraint, in the same way that positive growth may require the removal of negative qualities. Yet when one enters the correct path and one's ethical conduct is true, growth is unhindered. Negative qualities fall away. One needs not spend time removing them. Positive qualities increase the state of completion, and at which point one's life is fully devoted to sharing goodness with others. Secondly, form of constraint is related to personal disposition. There are some people referred to as engaging in difficult, arduous practice. In Pali, dukkha patipata or dukkha patipati, whose disposition is to be forceful in practice. Yet with their willingness and eagerness for constraint leads to self-discipline. Instead of suffering about constraint, they delight in training. They have the potential to grow and succeed. Ethics overlap with spiritual training accord with Gautama Buddha's teaching. Human beings require spiritual training. They only reach excellence and nobility by way of training. Spiritual training is equivalent to spiritual development. People reach spiritual success by way of training themselves. This is an aspect of human nature one cannot progress by simply following one's raw instincts. For this reason, one can see that spiritual training is linked to human nature. People can grow and prosper by engaging in spiritual training. In spiritual training unfolds correctly, if spiritual training unfolds correctly, it must be endowed with happiness. It must be a training of happiness. If people are unhappy while engaging in such practice, it can be assumed that they are not training correctly. When people engage in spiritual training, their lives undergo development and increase in virtue and wholesomeness. This life of virtue and rectitude is referred to as ethical conduct. In Pali, it's called Chariya Dhamma. The term is founded in this language this term is in the section of the path of the holy life in chapter 12 and the middle way. Ethics and spiritual training thus go hand in hand. In fact, one need not use the term must here, because when people practice correctly, these two elements naturally proceed in unison. When people engage in correct spiritual training, their lives improve and they experience greater happiness. Spiritual training is thus a cultivation in happiness. Moreover, every aspect of a person's life will be developed. It is this way that these factors are connected. Spiritual training is the development of happiness. Spiritual training is equivalent to ethical development. Developing ethics is the cultivation of happiness, etc. It is as the Gautama Buddha said, if one attends to the correct causes and conditions, one need not make an appeal. The dynamics of nature will proceed automatically. When rapture, piti, arises, the body and the mind are refreshed and relaxed. One need not ask for this to happen or even to have this intention. Relaxation, pasati, then follows naturally, according to things being just so. If a mother wishes for her chicks to hatch, she incubates the eggs. At the proper times, the mother hen, the chicks peck through the eggshell and emerge. Yet if the hen does not sit on the eggs, despite clucking loudly all day in front of the coop, her efforts will be in vain. The eggs will rot. No chicks will appear. Soon after the Second World War, technology was not yet as advanced as it is today. And before people could get in a car and drive away, they would have to use all their strength to turn the hand crank. Sometimes they would be utterly exhausted by the time the engine turned over. Nowadays, however, one only needs to turn one finger an inch on the ignition and the engine starts. Here we see both the connection and the distinction between human processes and the processes of nature. If we are to benefit from the processes of nature, then we must seek ways for them in complement to human activities. The amount of strain and difficulty we experience depend on how we can link our activities to natural processes and have these take over for us. If people are able to set up their activities effectively and to link them with dynamics of nature, they will abide in joy and at ease. And if people are accomplished, this will not have to act against their will. There will be no need for other people or for the government to exert pressure on them to act. Our responsibility is to simply to discern causes and conditions and then respond to them correctly. We need neither appeal to these things to be specific or to be a specific way or to resist them. There are some people who rather than resist the process of nature try to regulate their desires. They wholeheartedly practice self-restraint, and this restraint eventually becomes a form of self-training. This is another natural unfolding. Spiritual training in a way of developing people in happiness and other virtuous qualities. When they live a virtuous life, they live an ethical life. This is how ethics and trainings are defined in Buddhism. Here we use the term Buddhism simply as the mean of communication. If Buddhism teaches the truth, then it teaches nature. It teaches how things naturally exist, how things exist according to their own nature. A simple definition for Buddhism is thus teaching of natural truths. In sum, for spiritual training or ethical development to true and effective, it must include a cultivation of happiness. Spiritual training and ethical development are synonymous with development of happiness. If spiritual training is still accompanied by lack of enthusiasm and resistance, one will be unable to experience happiness. This is not genuine training. It is associated with ethical discipline, will be endowed with force and compulsion. Likewise, this is not true ethical conduct. Human regulations and a system of preconditions. Many people harbor the misunderstandings that by inciting craving and increasing greed, people will work harder in order to obtain consumable goods. They claim that such excess will spur the economy and lead to greater wealth for all. At first glance, this appears to be true, but these people do not see things correctly and are thus mistaken. Thinking in this way reveals a certain intelligence in engaging with craving within a system of preconditions. Yet, however skilled one is in manipulating craving, it is at almost impossible that such a method of thinking will create someone like Albert Einstein. The best it can do is to produce technocrats working in business economics who may create excitement or alarm as a result of their research, which is often not of great consequence. For problems to be truly solved, people need to possess wholesome enthusiasm to watch their intelligence. Remember, wholesome enthusiasm, chanta. In a simple example from a everyday life, one looking after one's physical body, one person is endowed with wholesome enthusiasm, chanta, sees and cares for his or her body, wishing for it to be strong, healthy, and clean. Another person, subject to craving, tanha, is prone to laziness, does not normally show concern for the body. Later, when tanha, craving, kicks in and he wants to appear enticing to someone else, he would try to make himself as physically attractive as possible. Which of these two forms of behavior will be more conducive to the well-being of the body? Now let us turn our attention to the systems of preconditions required for engagement with craving. Earlier, a distinction between the process of wholesome desire and the process of craving was described. In the process of craving, a fixed sense of self or a self-identity arises. Now we come to the second distinction. When craving acts as the motivation for action, it creates a system of preconditions that acts as the driving force for society. It is also the mechanism behind unsustainable development. When craving arises, people want to consume something. But when the object has not yet been obtained, they look for ways to acquire it. Here, things do not unfold according to the process of causes and conditions, but rather they link up with a set of preconditions. People may object. People may object here and say, craving is also a desire for action, but this is not so. Craving prefers idleness. Craving wishes to consume, to obtain, to acquire, but if the desired object has not yet been obtained, what can one do? Here one must accord with the stipulations. In order to get this, one must do that. One cannot obtain the desired object without acting in this particular way. This is how craving prompts activity within the systems of preconditions. Here one acts not out of wholesome enthusiasm, but because the action is a prerequisite for obtaining something. As the action is not a response to a true wish to act, the person does not experience happiness. There is not a wholehearted desire to act. And so the action is accompanied by suffering. Craving only spurs action because of preconditions. If one does not act, one does not obtain the desired object. The consumption of which provides happiness, the act itself, however, is done begrudgingly. One does not know how long one must wait in order to obtain the object and to fulfill gratification. The entire waiting process is filled with suffering. The long wait in order to obtain the object of gratification produces stress. In the end, this process is unsustainable. Rather than leading to true development, it leads to stress. Unsustainable development results in the perpetual state of stress. With wholesome enthusiasm, on the other hand, one wishes to act in order to bring about improvement. One acts with the constant desire to act. One thus is happy throughout the duration of the deed. One experiences no boredom or stress. This happiness is inherent to this process. It results directly from the existing causes and conditions. This principle applies to one's studies, one's works, indeed to all one's activities. If one acts with wholesome enthusiasm, one will find success and happiness throughout. Wholesome enthusiasm is essential. Gautama Buddha compared it to the light of the dawn. Just as the golden light of the dawn, Alun, is the precursor to the arising of the sun, so too it is one endowed with wholesome enthusiasm. It can be expected that one will flourish in spiritual training and in the Eightfold Noble Path. The dynamic of wholesome enthusiasm does not require a lengthy explanation because if it follows a natural process. According with causes and conditions, things becomes complicated because of overlapping systems of preconditions set up by human beings. Human beings nowadays are almost entirely dependent on a system based on preconditions. They have used their intelligence to establish conventional measures overlapping with natural laws in order to obtain results based on specific prerequisites. Natural laws of continuality, exist inherent in nature. Conventional laws are created and subscribed to human beings in order to meet and proceed according to specific preconditions. These two overlapping laws plays an important role in modern civilization. An example of this pertains to the domain of work. Imagine a government complex. Take the example, a university with spacious grounds and elegant buildings. People wish for this to be in a place of delight, to have fresh green lawns and parks with various species of flowering shrubs. How should one fulfill this desire? Here, people use their intelligence to divide the labor and create a system of a agreed upon standard. We know that trees and plants and grass thrive when they receive the proper nourishment and nutrients, including water and fertilizer. This pertains to the natural causes and conditions. To the fixed law of nature, knowing this, people then consider how they can propel or induce these natural causes and conditions. Here is where people establish an overlapping set of rules and criteria. Human laws are conventional truths, samadhi. There are agreements based on mutual knowledge and recognition. The Pali term samadhi refers to a shared understanding combined with a mutual agreement and acknowledgement. Human laws are based on mutual contracts and agreements. The example here is one may hire a person at $250 a month to be a gardener in order to water and prune the plants, work the soil, remove the weeds, etc., in order for the park to be a place of beauty and delight. Here, rules and a set of criteria have been established. The work as a gardener is a precise and definite cause, producing the effect of receiving a monthly salary. The salary appears to be a clear result of working as a gardener. In fact, there are two overlapping laws at work here. The laws of nature, the plants will only grow if there is a sufficiency of various factors like fertilizer and water. These laws are certain and absolute. The second law is the human laws. These are secondary laws established induced to various factors, requires for the dynamics of nature. These are conventions, regulations, or law established to create a position of the gardener funded by a monthly salary. These human laws deal with human factors. So the law of nature and the human laws. The factors pertaining to human laws help to propel the factors inherent in nature so that they proceed in a way that fulfills the desire of human beings. But as mentioned above, human laws are based on conventional agreements. They are not certain and definite like natural laws. They can be altered, distorted, or subject to manipulation and deceit. The employer may not honor the agreement or only give the person $200 a month. If the gardener does not consent, he may need to dispute this matter or file a formal complaint. Conversely, the employee may not dedicate himself to the work and instead go off to sleep or go drinking with his friend. Come to the end of the month, he demands his salary, but he has not acted in accord with the laws of nature. Although he receives 250 or even 300, there is no way for the plants to thrive. Of these two overlapping set of laws, human laws are subject to distortion. People may not follow through their promises and agreements. The result is that people get into arguments and get caught up with stipulation attached to these conventional laws. Such human conventions can thus potentially cause all sorts of problems. They're not truly reliable. The essence of human laws does not rest with the laws themselves, but rather with people. If one wants these laws to be successful, one need not to train people to be honest. In the end, the essential factor is education for people to learn to love the truth and abide in honesty. Human laws are based on a system of preconditions. If one works for 1 month as a gardener, one receives 250. This appears to be clearly defined as causes and effect, but what does a closer examination reveal? Working for a month as a gardener cannot in itself produce a salary of $250. The money only comes by way of a proviso. This is an example of provisional system or a system of preconditions. Some people will only do the work in order to fulfill the preconditions. One may do the gardening work simply to receive the salary, but in one heart, one has no desire for the plants to prosper and grow. If the gardener only desires the results of human stipulation and is not interested in the direct results of natural law, he is not endowed with a wholesome desire. He is not interested in the welfare of the plants. He is prompted by wholesome enthusiasm, but by craving. He only wants the money. Craving is the driving force leading to the persons to act according to the terms within the agreed upon conventions. If the gardener has no true desire for the plants to flourish, he will not love his work. Rather, he will have to force himself to work. The work will thus be a burden with a sense of suffering. This is one of the vital problems of people in this present age. As civilization develops, people's suffering increases. People's work, activities, and education is beset by suffering because they are caught up in the system of preconditions. They are caught up in the system of craving. That's the end of 11.9, part 1. I'm going to stop there today. Page 1154 to 1162.